Alright, so it looks like we're on air. So last week we were looking at the iEstimate template sheet and how that relates to Databuild and quick estimating associated with our drawings and the information we're able to extract from ArchiCAD to obviously keep our overheads down in the estimating department and to try and keep the, try and keep the orders as accurate as possible, which is the dream. So I'm just going to minimize this for a moment, start sharing my screen. Alright, let me know when you guys can see.
Yeah, we can see it, thanks.
Beautiful. Alright, so last week we were working on the Newbury job, which was a cascade. So I'm just going to jump into the database for it. So this job here is the one we were working away on. It's a Cascade 399, very large house. Had a few amendments here to the kitchen to obviously square it up and separate the patio. So we were extracting all the information from this areas here in the top left hand corner, and also what we could visually see on the plans that obviously we're able to extract from the drafting team to input that information into our Excel sheet, which would then form the foundation of our recipe or our explosion into the data build to create a bill of quantities, which is probably 50 to 60, maybe even 70% complete, depending on what kind of home it is and what kind of nuances need to be addressed. So just going to jump over here and load up the estimate sheet, which is the one we were working on last week. This one just here. We'd obviously filled out the contract amount, it removed the GST. Now that forms the foundations for calculating our overheads, calculating the salesman's commission, goes towards our maintenance allowances. Essentially, it's how we determine the general cost associated with a lot of jobs. So we also have the rest of the items here. The external perimeter, which came straight off the floor plan, the internal frame length, which came from the quantities page, which was also located on iGyro, which is the special sheet we're able to extract from from ArchiCAD, which gives us what area rooms, gives us total wall lengths and thicknesses associated, roofing areas, so it works out the pitch for you, works out your hips, valleys, all that kind of jazz. And so we were inputting this information into the job. So if we go back here to the elevations, it says here that it's 2740 high Scion linear cladding. So as you can see here, we put in 85.5 linear meters was the external perimeter straight off the floor plan, just there, which is external wall face of the perimeter around the house. It doesn't go out around the eaves, it's actually just the wall area. We then put in the internal length, which was from the quantities page, which appears to have changed marginally since we filled it out. I'm assuming there must have been some changes to the plans, seeing as I had to re-download them. 124.25. Frame thickness averages at 70 mil, so that's correct. Now we have two different lengths here. This one here should actually be the color purple, and I've fixed that. The color yellow, which I've fixed on the newest version, which will be uploaded later today. So it is essentially looking at the value of this and putting that into this field. So it equals that minus the value you enter into this one here. So this is an input field and this is a subtotal field. So it's saying if there's 85.5 linear meters of cladded frame and it's 85.5 all around, then clearly there can't be any brick veneer. So this 0.09 is essentially only the thickness of the timber frame. You can adjust that if you want to get it as close as humanly possible to what the true internal face area is of the houses. So we've assumed it's a 90mm external frame. So if we have a look here at the elevations, it is a Scion linear cladding. So I'm just going to jump onto Google very quickly. And see if I can ascertain what the thickness of that board actually is. Because we can add that to that point, that 0.09, which will then bring us a little bit closer. For deep shadow lines, so it appears that the board is available in a 16mm thick. So if we come back here to this sheet and add and let's actually just take it an extra 2 square meters out of the whole house by adding that little bit of thickness. That's what we've managed to do. So these areas here should hopefully still match the main page. 265, 34.95, 42.46, 8.72, 18.02 and 32.3. The slab area came straight off the slab plan. 301.43. Now we can't complete any of these details just here until we actually have these ones here, until we have the engineering for the job. The benefit of this sheet is once you explode it, you still use this as your reference point. Not all information from this sheet is able to be easily transferred or automatically transferred into Databuild. It's just the key items which are replicated over and over and over again in multiple cost centers. Everything else, this is essentially a document you can keep on your second screen or print out, and you then manually enter into it. It's your reference calc sheet. So I'm just going to jump past all these. We've done all these already, except for the tiling. Now, I suspect this house may have non-standard tiling, so I may have to check the contract in relation to that. We've already done all the doors and described where their locations are, sizings, handings, jams, looks like we've done. Shelving will be something we'll do in a moment. And last week there was a little bit of confusion on my part around these fields right here. So that perimeter of eaves is obviously incorrect because the eaves are not necessarily following the house, they're going out and around. So I'm just going to grab the length tool, 0.1. Now we want to measure the short edge, that tool there actually, which is, or even the area tool may be easier because it'll automatically snap back to itself when we're done. So we just want to follow the short edge of the eave all the way out and around, and then we'll pick up the extra area by calculating the external corners. Now there's a wastage factor of about 20% applied to this, so if you're not measuring perfectly, it's not a huge thing. When you're ordering in 2.4 sheets, you'd rather have that little bit extra. So if we have a look at the perimeter, it's saying it's 80.15, and that is because I have the wrong scale set. This is actually the not scale plan. So 0.12. 96.18. 96.18. So if we come back here and go 96.18. Now external corners, we'll double check. So that's the external corners of the eaves. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So we're good there. Perimeter with no eaves is none. There's eaves all the way around. External length of our fresco and porch. Now what this is actually asking for is the length of the 900mm wide eave sheets, which I've clarified on the latest release. And that's because obviously you've got a beam, you've got a raised ceiling to your alfresco to match the internal level, and you've got your eave coming in obviously at your drop-off level. So you've got a beam running between your timber posts carrying that weight, which you have to conceal. So you need the wider eave sheet to line the underside of that beam. So versus normally where it would just sit on top of the brickwork or sit into the timber frame. So once again, if we double check the scale and the right tool, and we just want to run along the edge of these 900mm eave sheets.
Shane, just quickly, you mentioned the new release. Have you just saved that into
In about
global documents?
it'll be uploaded by the end of today. I was editing it while I was waiting for everyone to join.
So you're going to send out a note to everyone and let them know you want me to do that?
Oh, you most certainly can do if you choose. I've just been generally updating them, and I've always recommended everyone check whenever they start a new job to ensure they're working on the most recent, because sometimes I could have 3 updates a week.
All right. So you just delete the old one and put the most current one in there?
I move it out to into the old folder, so it's there for historical purposes. And yes, I upload the newest one into that main folder.
So do you remember what section you're saving that into in global documents?
So global documents, estimators, job calcs.
Okay, thanks.
So the most recent version will always be located here, and all the historical versions will be in this old folder here.
Thank you.
Jobs. So we've got 7.19 linear meters here, and 46.07 there. So calc 46.07 plus, I believe it was 7.19. 7.19 is 53.26. So of that 96, 53.26 is actually 900mm wide. Now the external length of the box beams, as I was talking about earlier, where you've got the 900mm eave sheet now extending along the underside of the beam to conceal it from underneath, you still obviously have an issue that you've got a Versalux ceiling a couple of 100mm, 300-400mm higher than where the underside of your beam is. So you need to conceal that side face. So this is what this extra length here is for, and in many instances it will be the same value as your 900mm wide eave sheets. The only instance it would be different would be perhaps if you don't really have a raised ceiling. If it's a small porch that's kind of contained in the perimeter of the house, so it's not a raised ceiling, we normally just line those in FC. So you may have a circumstance where you're using a 900mm wide sheet just to get it in there and to work with your eave sheets. So in this instance, though, the beam is going to obviously follow this through here where it says beam over, which is exactly what we've measured. So that length will be the same. And the vented eave sheets is obviously the length of the vented eave sheets, and we have 1 and 2. So our specification states that we provide 2 vented eave sheets per dwelling as standard, usually as close to a wet area as possible, and once again, hopefully on opposing sides of the house to allow cross-flow ventilation and to let obviously any mildew or any smells in the roof space to escape. So we've now tidied that section up. Now shelving, that's the next item we might move on to, so I'll just quickly save this. So the standard details for our standard our shelving systems are uploaded to construction details under global documents. There's a whole raft of standard details in here. The ones which are of interest to us right now are this one here, and also the robe detail. So this is, although this detail is written in 2012, it's still the same detail we're using now, which is a 16mm thick particle board shelf at 1800 with a hanging rail as per the detail here, supported on a 42 by 19 bit of timber with either a 19 or 70 by 19. That's actually not correct. It's a 92 by 19 or 62 by 19. 70mm isn't a standard timber size. 62 by 19 with a piece of architrave fixed to the front face to finish that join where you've obviously got your 16mm and your vertical piece providing it support on the front face. So this is still our standard robe detail, so it's a single shelf, and this is still our standard linen detail. It's essentially the same detail except there's 4 of them and there's no hanging rail. So that's what we've got to keep in mind when we're working on this here. So if we jump back to the plans and we just choose so the bedroom one to begin with, we don't have any linens or anything in the ensuite, but we have one very large walk-in robe. So if we jump back here and we go bed 1 walk-in robe, there's a drop down here, and so it is a robe. Now it in the back end we've written in data fields which adjust the number of shelves or let you know what you need to do based upon this information. If you're using a different number of shelves or different detail, then this information may not be correct for yourselves. So a walk-in robe, a robe, linen has 4, pantry has 4, storage has 4, bank of shelves is 3 shelves because you've already got your existing top rail, and a broom is 1 shelf just like a robe but with no hanging rail. So we've got a walk-in robe by 2, and the walk-in robe length is 3.04 as per this just here. So we have 3040. Now we have 1 shelf length. Obviously a 2400 isn't going to quite cut it, so we're going to have to go to a 3600, and we have 2 spans. We have 1 span and 2 spans, so we'd adjust this to 2. Shelf length 2 and shelf and quantities is in circumstances where you may need vertical supports and things of that nature. Shelf width, the particle board is available in a 600 and 300 wide sheet. So we would choose 600 and, sorry, the MDF or the particle board. So actually, no, sorry, I need to clarify something. These details here are referring to particle board. That is no longer our standard. MDF is our standard shelving system. Rather than particle board, we're having too much grief with paint ripping off it and things like that after they're painted. So the number of shelves and the general system is still the same, just the actual material specified is slightly different. Now the robe reveal refers to this piece of timber here, the 90 by 19. Now if there is no robe door, i.e. sliding door track, then there is no requirement for a robe reveal. So you'll see here by me choosing walk-in robe, it's assumed that there is not a vinyl sliding door, and it is automatically chosen no for robe reveal. And it's chosen architrave facing as a yes because that is our standard detail for the shelving. So if we then go to the next room, which is bed 2, and we choose robe, you'll see that information changes. It's now assuming, like, let me stress that, it's assuming a robe has a reveal on it. If you are using hinge doors, for your robes or your linen, then that will not be the case. This piece of timber is the piece of timber which runs as your header and runs along the ground to fix your track into for your robe door system. If you're not using a robe door system like we are, then this piece of timber and this information here needs to be amended to no. Otherwise, you'll be allowing additional timber on site unnecessarily. So we've got bed to robe 11310. Now a robe has one shelf as standard, as it's stating just here, so we can get away with a single 1800 shelf. It is shown as 600 deep, with quite a bit of standing space in front, and it's MDF, and once again it has a standard architrave facing. Refrigerator space, if we then go into bed 3, bed 4 and bed 5, we have some more robes. So let's go bed 3 robe, bed 4 robe, bed 5 robe. I'll just jump through these nice and quickly. 2310, 2310 and 2310. So we can get away with a 2400 long shelf. One of each. And 600 wide. So the 300 wide shelves are really only used where a client specifically requests it, and it's shown as being a very thin shelf, or in linens. Or in pantries. Sometimes they're used in pantries. So we've done that one, that one, that one. Now we have a linen here, which is 1170 wide in the laundry. And it's stating 4. So it's just a visual reminder that you know you need additional shelving there. So we probably could use two 2400s and rip them down the guts. And that's a lot cheaper than buying 4 1800s and wasting a side. Now, once again, it's assumed a robe reveal and it's assumed an architrave facing, which is indeed the case. Now, this second linen is much smaller, 780, I believe. Now, out of a 780, that's 4 800s and a 3600. So, I believe that's right. 900, so there's miles of space. So we should be able to get away with one 3600 that we rip down 3 times to get 4 different sheets. I'll have to rip 4 because you'll take the end off one. It'd be 600 MDF. Now in this instance, because it is a hinged door, it will have its own jam on it, and it will have flooring running underneath it, and there won't be any track there whatsoever. So you would change this to no, but it would still have an architrave facing. Now we have 2 stores in the rumpus, and I'll come back to that one. So we'll go rumpus store, store. And if we choose store, it should automatically choose 4. And those stores are, it's not right, it shouldn't be a store, unless there's one through here. Oh, there's another one there. Store 1.1270 and 1430. 1270, 1430. Now, We're not going to be able to work 2400, but we may be able to rip down two 3600s. Once again, 600 MDF. And these both have robe reveals and architrave facing. Now you could choose the closest size sheet, I guess, to reduce the number of cuts a carpenter has to do, but most of our trades on our Databuild rates are working on set square meter rates for a home. So whilst they may have to do a little bit more work, we're saving significant amounts of money by buying one 3600 versus buying two 1800s, where the cost difference between them might be $2 or $3, but you've earned $2 or $3 or maybe $5, but you don't have to buy both. So we've got a third store, so kitchen store. And must be this one here, $12.90. Now once again, 2400s are not going to get a clean cut down the middle, and a 3600 isn't really going to work either. We're going to go over, so in this instance we probably are just buying 4 1800s. And it has a final system, so it is also, so once again it has a robe reveal. And the last one here is this broom/linen. So it's one in the same, which is where the shelf length number 2 comes into handy. So we have broom/linen. So we're going to choose linen because there's no option to split. And we'll do that manual split ourselves. So 2020. Now if we have a quick look, that broom will logically be about 600 mil of the width. 0.12. About 600. So if we go, that means there's 1420 on this side and 600 on that side. So we've got 4 shelves, then we've got a vertical to separate. So essentially, if we come back here to the Excel sheets, of that length we have we've got one that has to span the whole distance right across the top, which is 1/2400 that'll span the whole way. Then we've got a second one which is an 1800, which has to be the vertical support, which is that dotted line there, the separator or the piece of timber you would then fix into. So that would be an 1800 because our top shelf height, actually maybe a little bit more on this, actually has to be greater than 1800 because our top shelf is actually at 2 meters. So we would have to get 2 of these, one to be the top, one to be the vertical. And then with the leftover length of 1420, we need to have 3 sheets, 1, 2, 3, because that one's the top rail that runs the whole length. So we have 1, 2, 3 sheets at 1500. So I would just go 3 1800s. And there is an architrave facing, and there is also a robe reveal on this one here. So if we just double check this, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I believe that's all of them. That's how many we should have here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So that's now the shelving component sorted, and you'll see it's allowed for 17 lengths of 42 by 18, 6 lengths of 66 by 18, which is for the front facing on the short spans, 20 lengths of 92 by 18, which is for the robe reveals to finish the track to sit on top of and to finish the top opening, and also for the vertical support that runs along the front of the shelf on spans greater than 1800. Where was I? Back there and back here. It's allowed 8 18s, 7 36s, and 7 24s. And it's also lifted the architrave by 35 lengths to allow for that architrave facing and to allow it to run around those robes. So now the last thing we can really do before we explode it is, there's no brickwork, we've already done all the windows, can't do the concrete till we've got the engineering. So really the only thing left we can do to then get this in a suitable position to explode and to start working on a bill of quantities would be the wall and floor tiling, depending on what the contract is saying about the heights of those. So if we jump over here to the iProcs, have a look at the job workup, we'll just type in tile. So, alright, so it looks like the bathroom and ensuite has floor to ceiling tiling, which was worth an extra $6,143 from a contract perspective. So if we have a look at the floor plans, hopefully it's stating something to that effect, but it may not be. It does not appear to be abundantly clear on the plans, which is why it's always very, very important to obviously check what the contract says before just assuming. So if we come here to the Excel spreadsheet, so this top section here, this bottom section here is essentially when you've got straightforward standard tiling, then you can get away with using this here. So you just put in the total floor area, total linear meters, shower, bath, and any openings, i.e. breaks in the skirting, and it spits out the values for you. These rounded up values can be found on the quantities page from here, which makes estimating tiling incredibly straightforward. When the tiling heights are non-standard, things become a little bit more complicated and you've got to revert to using the non-standard tiling areas above, which is what we're going to have to do in this instance. One moment, just need a drink. So I'm just going to move these out of the way. So we have a kitchen length, so that kitchen length is referring to the splashback on that kitchen. Obviously we need to clarify firstly whether or not it is a tiled splashback or if it is a glass splashback. It doesn't say anything here about it not being tiled, and there doesn't appear to be anything in the contract stating that it's glass either. So next thing we do is have a look in the contracts and see if we can find a color selection document, which we have here, and see if it actually states tile or otherwise. Doors, kitchen. Have the special greeny white back glass just on the kitchen store include as free upgrade. So it looks like they want, because they are not getting Christmas, can they have, okay, so that relates to the store. Splashback, so it appears that they want a glass splashback. So we can remove tiling entirely from the kitchen. So now we can move back to the actual floor plan. So with full height tiling, it's actually not too difficult. When you start talking varying heights on different walls, it gets a little bit more complicated. But seeing as we already know what the total length of the walls are in these rooms, and we know that it's going to go to a maximum height of 2700, it's just a matter of taking out the openings and the areas where there won't be tiles. So if we say choose the ensuite as an example and go floor dimension 1 by floor dimension 2, now you can physically enter this off the plans and go around and measure all the areas, or you can just do what I do, and we know the total area is 12.37, and 1, which essentially creates 12.37 square meters worth of tiles along the floor. Now, for full height tiling, we do not use either of these fields because we're going to pick them up in the actual wall area. There's no need to differentiate between those areas from a total supply and or labor perspective. So all we would have to do is have a look here at the quantities page, and it says 15.95. So 15.95 by 2.7 gives us 43 square meters worth of tiles for the walls and 12.37 for the floor, which is what we got from there. So now it's just a matter of obviously taking out the door openings, any areas where there would be something blocking the tiles or where there wouldn't be tiles, window openings, where the vanity is wall hung, and obviously the mirror above, because the tiles will finish around the mirror won't be fitted off to the tiles after the fact, so we can reduce and take all those out of the labor rate as a deduction. So the first thing we do is take out this opening, which is 1.82 by 2.1, so 3.822. So we would go equals sum 3.822 plus the window, which is 1.2 by 1.8, 2.16. Now this is a pink field, so it's a deduction, so whatever value we put in here has to be a positive, and then it will automatically do the negative adjustment. We have the vanity, which we don't have a design on yet, I'd imagine. We can have a quick look. Oh, no, we actually do. So that'll give us a feel for what the general height of the vanity is, and our standard mirror above is always, don't want to do that, can't get into it. I don't have Outlook set up on this machine. So our standard vanities are about 600 high, so I'll be conservative and just only do a 500 deduction. And then we have a 900 mil high mirror above. So if we go 0.5 plus 0.9 times by the length of the vanity, which is 1.2, that allows us to do another 1.68 square meter deduction. So you see it's now just taken 7.662 square meters out of the wall area that would otherwise have been paid to the tiler unnecessarily. Now, the only thing we need to check is this external perimeter to see if it actually included this internal wall, because we may have to add this wall also. So we'll just run around the outside just quickly. And just see how accurate that total perimeter length is. Saying 19.27. I don't think that's anywhere near what we had, was it? So we'll have to check the accuracy of these plans here, because I believe sorry, I'm using the wrong scale on this plan. 16.06. Okay, so we've concluded that that area there does not make any allowance for this internal wall, which will also need to be tiled both, full height and sides. So if we have a look at that wall length, it's at 1.82. So we just go ensuite 2, and we would go 1.82 by 2.7. It's just allowed an extra 5. Sorry, it actually needs to be both lengths, doesn't it? 1.82. 1.82, 3.64. So obviously you've got both sides of that wall, and we've already taken that deduction out of the other one, so it doesn't really matter. We can just leave that as a 0. So that would be the ensuite tiling done. Now the bathroom is going to be very, very similar in that it also had full height tiling according to iProx. To bathroom and an ensuite to a maximum finished tile height of 2700. Alright, so now we do bathroom, and we're also going to have a bathroom number 2. So we'll just see if we can overwrite that. There we go. So if we jump into the quantities page, and we have 12.23, so we can just go 1 by 12.23. Once again, we don't worry about these fields here. Now total wall length is 15.69 by 2.7, and the deductions would not be dissimilar. If we take out the total door area, so 0.82 by 2.1, it's 1.722, so equals sum and we can take out the vanity, so which would be 0.5 plus 0.9 by 1.2, 1.68 plus. Now you wouldn't take anything out for the bath, because essentially what you're not tiling on that wall will be tiled on the front of the bath, but we will have to allow additional tiling to the two sides here of the bath. The toilet, once again, by the time they cut around it, it's kind of pointless. The window we can take out, so 0.9 times 1.8, 1.62. I believe that should be all of the deductions. So it's just taken 5 square meters out of it for us. Now for the bathroom number 2, we'll pick up this wall here and we'll do that wall twice. 1.65 by 2, 3.3 by 2.7 with no deductions. But then we've also got to pick up the ends of these baths. Keep pressing the wrong button. Now this is the one with the numbers, so it is 1 to 120. So we're about 700 wide there. So if we go bath length of 0.7 by 2, it's just allowed that little bit of extra tiling. So that's now the bathroom done. So now it's just a matter of doing the laundry. Now with the laundry, we'll just choose laundry, and we'd get the areas once again straight out of here. So 5.87 by 1. There's no shower, there's no bath. There is a skirting deduction at the doorway, and at so that linen hasn't been measured, so you wouldn't take that one out because the perimeter that they've picked up is the external perimeter. So you wouldn't take out this one here or that one there. There would be a skirting tile that runs out and around. So we would just take out the 0.82. There's no need to work out area because the skirting tile doesn't work on area, it just works on the length. And then we have, that's about it. So it's had a look at the total perimeter, which I don't think will work in this one here with non-standard tiles because it wants to know the total perimeter of the room, which is not working out as that. So bear with me one moment. We might do the laundry down here. If we go 5.87 and go total room perimeter of 11.55. And then do 0.82. Let's add a little bit extra tiling there. Now the only thing extra we have to really allow for is an additional tile just in case, well actually no, because that's a closed cabinet. So if this was a washing machine under and there was going to be a skirting tile as well as a wall tile above, then you would logically have to add that extra area, but because all we're doing is shifting the skirting tile from the ground to above the washing machine, there's no need to add anything extra there. So it's saying total 123, 147 square meters would be our supply, which would be our wastage factor, and 19 millimeters of skirting. Now, the supply factor, we allow Beaumonts to calculate the tiling themselves. We essentially just use this as a reference point for checking their quantities for rooms and checking their overall supply. Obviously, their wastage factor will be affected by the differing tiles and how they need to be laid in terms of their sizes and the room sizes. But this is just a general indication of whether or not they're on the money and roughly how accurate our tile labor rates are. So we hit save. Now I think that's this document ready to go essentially for an explosion. So now what we're going to do is load up remote desktop. Have to bear with me a moment while I load up Databuild, and we're just gonna, so we're in Databuild right now. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the appearance of Databuild, but this is essentially how it looks. If I just close that down. So the main page is essentially this here. Normally it doesn't do that spaz thing, but it's a bug that they've got when you log out. I'll just log in. And we're presented with a couple of different options. We've got the catalog, suppliers, jobs and debtors, contacts. So as an estimator, you primarily use bill of quantities and orders. So if we jump into bill of quantities and go to this job reference, you'll see there's very little in here. The only things that should ever be in here when you go to explode it would logically maybe be some early council fees, a surveyor's report, engineering reports, and things that you would essentially be doing earlier on in the piece. So if I untick this, you'll be able to see all of the live cost centers. And now what we're going to do is, first, before I go any further, I'm just going to fix this job because it's running on a old cost center bank. This is something you won't have to do. This is just something relevant to ours. There we go. That's better. Okay, so if we jump back here to the to iGyro to the global docs, you'll see here under estimators job calcs there is a general estimating procedural spreadsheet. Sorry, Word doc letter PDF, which details exactly how to get the information out of the Excel iProcs into Databuild. And so I recommend you familiarize yourselves with this. I'm going to do it pretty quickly. So just going to go into Databuild. We're going to go to cost center 999. Oh, wrong field. 999, which is estimating recipes. open up the binoculars, which is the line items associated with this cost center, and we want to add these items right here, 01 to 018, and add them. Now, when you're doing the explosion, you can set the price level or the region pricing at this very early stage, and then it will apply that to every item that is exploded. So what I'm going to do is set this to number 2, because this job is based in our northwest region, and it'll save me from having to reprice all those items after the fact. Just going to choose Integrity New Homes. Now these values here come straight out of the estimates sheet. So if we load it up, and now that we're finished on the calcs page, we want to have a look at the summary sheet. You'll see these values here, or these references specifically relate to what is in Databuild. So we've got 0 bricks, 1 standard item. So I'm just going to copy these in quickly. So we'd go 1, 0, and then 504418.18. Now I think maybe you can copy these, I'm not sure. There we go, that worked. Now you'll see these areas here explain how they've been calculated, and essentially the different areas are applicable to different people. So you know, with some people you'd pay for the total slab area, i.e. concreters. Most trades you would literally just pay the internal face area. Some things would, you know, like roofing or things like that, may be done on the total area, or the so certain allowances are calculated on the total area. So we break it down using the mathematical formulas to take out the veneers and things like that to only pay for what trades are actually doing. So we've got 291.16. And it can have a very massive effect on your job's profitability if you start paying external face area or eave area of a house versus, you know, what a painter's actually doing internally. Could be 10-15 square meters discrepancy, which, you know, could be, you know, quite a few $1,000s on your bottom line at the end of the day. So 7 of 9. Alright, so we've now added in all these items. Now this explosion or this recipe is set up in our database based upon our standard house items that relate to our designer specification. So our standard house, which is a brick veneer tile roof, blah blah blah. So when I add these items in, it's going to explode out a standard house. You know, a house that we would have in our standards. You know, it would you know, assume there'd be one entry door. It will assume, you know, that there's no termite proofing externally, because that's not our standard. It's gonna make a lot of assumptions based upon our designer specification. So there won't be any timber decking that comes in. There presumably won't be any balustrades. Things that aren't in our basic slab on ground brick veneer tile roof will not be added, and each of those line items will then be addressed as we go through and finalize each cost center or each trade or material supply. So now we've populated this information, we go to the little chef's hat for the recipe, and we want sort quantities, multiple paths, sort workups we don't need, generate quantities yes, and we want to go cost center because that's what we're in. And if we hit this explosion button, you'll see before your eyes a bill of quantities for a house generated. So it has now gone ahead and automatically exploded all of these standard house items into the job. It's assumed, you know, 20 MPa concrete for slabs. It's got all our standard items for a standard house. Now we just obviously populate the information now, or remove and replace as required, and go from there. So as I was saying earlier about so we've gone from $4,000 to $157,000 worth in the bill of quantities. So now essentially we can just delete this, jump down. Now it's straight away said, this is the contract amount, that's the sales commission that's standard, that's how much will be paid for sales commission on this job. So it's done and dusted for us, so we can mark it as green. Our overheads, they've been defined and calculated by our accountant and set up and defined in our database, and it's saying for this contract amount, XGST, this is the overheads or the running costs associated to generate that job, from a project management, estimating and design perspective. So contingency, it's, once again, it's said this is how much we should keep aside for extra overs associated with travel or orders coming in over budget, difficulty getting trades. There's a great number of items which I'm able to mark green straight away, which are purely just calculated by the actual area. So you'll see right here, it's taken the external clean area as the area of all al frescoes and porches or unenclosed areas, and it's automatically put that in. And then it's gone and put the internal face area into both of these items automatically for us. Site clean, it's assumed less than 200 because that's our standard line item. All we do is amend that and then hit green. Same goes with painters. It's worked out, that it's, the inside area is one thing, the external area is another thing. So we now have a bill of quantities that we can go ahead and adjust as per the color selection or as per the client's selection in terms of roof coverings, wall coverings. Obviously the brickwork isn't applicable in this instance. So because we put 0 in, or these items that come in with just a quantity of 1, but you could very, very easily just quickly delete out anything to do with bricks right now and go and start adding in the cladding. So it's just running over time now. So essentially that is iEstimate and that is Databuild Explosion, and I think next week I might just continue on with this bill of quantities in terms of marking items off and showing you guys how to process the color selection and things like that, and then beyond that we'll jump back into iProcs and contract pricing, and I believe we will perhaps have some new things to discuss in a few weeks' time around new features and things like that as well. So has anyone got any questions before we call it a day?
I don't, thank you.
No, anything anyone was unsure of? Out of, I guess, Anne, Chris, Martin, Michael, Tracy, are any of you guys using Databuild just yet or looking at using it in your businesses?
Thank you.
Do you use it, Dave?
The plan is to use Databuild definitely.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's good. I was very, very critical of it when I first started, and didn't necessarily think it had a great deal of value. It was very, very cumbersome and just didn't seem to have the functionality I was looking at until we actually got some training sessions around it and realized that we weren't using it to its full capacity in any way, shape or form. And there's still so many more features that I'm learning about on a daily basis. For instance, area pricing with postcodes. So we've recently set up in our database, depending on the postcode of the job, a different price will appear for a supplier. So for instance, if Bunnings charge one thing in Coffs Harbour but charge another in Ballina, there's no requirement now for an estimator to manually override a price. It'll look at the postcode and where it's been defined in the database by myself, it will automatically input that price. So I think that's it's got a lot of functionality there, and I think if you aren't using it yet and you suspect there's an opportunity to integrate it into your business, it's definitely worthwhile pursuing.
Okay.
So, all right. Thank you very much for your time, everyone. We'll go again next week.
Good. Thank you, Sean.
Thanks, Seamus.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Good, Sean.